Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the St. Pete by Night Twitch stream where we play St. Petersburg by Night, a massive multiplayer 5th edition World of Darkness Chronicle set in St. Petersburg, Florida, including Vampire the Masquerade, including Hunter the Reckoning, and including Werewolf the Apocalypse. My name is Kent, also known as MissMagitek on all social media. I am the lead storyteller of St. Pete by Night, but tonight I play the role of host because this is After Dark. And After Dark is our behind the scenes show where we talk to some of the movers and shakers within St. Pete by Night. But also, every now and then, we're fortunate enough to talk to some of the movers and shakers in the greater World of Darkness community. And I'm so happy to say that we have one of those, in my opinion, movers and shakers of the World of Darkness tonight. Tonight, we are talking to MissMagitek, also known as Tracie, who is a huge TikTok influencer, a streamer, a storyteller, a across-the-board TTRPG lover, a cosplayer, and we are going to get into all of that amazing stuff. There's so much to talk about, and I'm really hoping we're going to have enough time to get to it all because there is just so much we can say. Before we introduce Tracie, I'd like to mention to everyone, we have a giveaway tonight, and it is a very special giveaway. Our friend over at Chromatic Creations, also known as one of our storytellers, Crafty, is giving away a free art piece tonight as part of our stream, which we are very fortunate and lucky to be able to do. So you can get one free color character art for a single character from Chromatic Creations. All you have to do to get into the running for that giveaway is put in the hashtag crafty in the chat and you will be in the running to get that free art piece. And it could be a character from the World of Darkness, it could be a character from D&D, it could be a character from any TTRPG. All you have to do is put hashtag crafty in the chat and you will get that art piece from Chromatic Creations. A big thank you to them, as well as all of our other partnered vendors who make this, as well as all of our shows, possible. We couldn't do it without them. Now let's get to the fun stuff. Tracie, say hello and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Hi. Oh my gosh, I'm very excited. I'm Tracie, also known as MissMagitek, also known as MagiRPG, because that's what I do in my free time. Is I do a lot of content creation. I do a lot of Twitch streaming stuff, and I run a channel called MagiRPG where me and my friends play tabletop stuff all throughout the week. And many of us run games. It's like kind of a collaborative thing now. And unintentionally, each of us have kind of become storytellers for like our favorite systems. And I've become the World of Darkness storyteller for MagiRPG. And I've run all 3 of the 5th editions now in the past year, which has been a lot of fun and very rewarding and really great. But yeah, that's me and what I do. Play a lot of tabletop stuff, do a lot of content creation, all of that stuff in my free time when I'm not doing my normal, boring full-time job. That's what I do in all of my free time. So yeah, that's me.
And we're going to break it down and get into the nitty-gritty of all of those things because that is such an impressive resume that you just mentioned in that brief period of time that I feel like we have to highlight some of the features of that resume. But let's start at the very beginning. Let's take it all the way back.
Yes.
When did you first get involved with TTRPGs in general, not just World of Darkness, but TTRPGs in general? And did you have any preconceived notions about TTRPGs before you decided to try them yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question to start. Like so my intro, and it's probably not unique and is very similar to many other people, that I started with TTRPGs with D&D. And I started actually with 5th edition, similar to my World of Darkness story. I got into D&D in 5th edition back in probably like 2015, 2016 now. It all started at my old job that I used to work at. We had actually started a coworker D&D game. And honestly, I don't miss working in an office. I'm fully remote now, which is great.
That's good.
And I work from home, which is awesome. But the one thing I will miss is we used to, after work, rent or just get a conference room from our office and, order food and play D&D after work. And it was amazing. I really enjoyed those times because it really built my passion for playing TTRPGs in general. And I also, at that time, and for many years now, even prior to when I got into D&D, I've always been a streamer and doing content stuff in my free time. And I've, been a gamer my whole life, play a lot of RPGs in general. That's my favorite genre. I used to stream like The Witcher and Dragon Age and a bunch of RPGs. So, D&D was obviously a natural thing to get into from there. And my kind of worlds collided when a friend of mine asked me to be on her TTRPG stream. And we actually started with World of Darkness. It was just like old World of Darkness stuff. And I started playing on a bunch of channels and playing TTRPGs, all different types of TTRPGs. I've played just so much. I got really also into Cyberpunk Red a lot. That's like my other big passion outside of World of Darkness now is Cyberpunk Red. And yeah, that's it. Just I really got into it and just did more and more TTRPG streaming. And from there, I just got into it. And so yeah, like any preconceived notions about it, I think for me, not really. Like it was just a very natural thing for me to kind of transition to, like from just going to video games to tabletop and that being like my main thing now and what I do a lot of. And it's just been really great. And I've really enjoyed it and happy to just have it as like my main passion now.
Well, some of those video games you listed were a perfect can transition or at least an
Yeah,
introduction to the concept. Like Dragon Age, that series of games is one of my favorite video game series of all time, and it does
same.
perfectly encapsulate the role playing experience. And now with like games like Baldur's Gate 3 coming out,
Yep.
which really do bring in the full D&D experience with dice rolling and everything, I feel like we are going to see a continued uptick of the genre, the hobby, and people
Yep.
are going to get more and more into it. And so I think that absolutely makes sense that it starts with role playing video games and then transitions to tabletop role playing. And that's absolutely amazing. So, what was your first D&D class or character, and now what's your favorite D&D class?
Yes. So my first one was a bard and I am a bard at heart. I knew I wanted to play a bard. I played a half elf bard and she definitely played into some of the tropes of honestly, my first characters for a lot of things. My first VTM character played into a lot of the it was a Toreador and I played into a lot of the tropes as well. I don't mind that personally.
No.
I don't mind playing a trophy character. And so that was my first D&D class. And I think my favorite is actually Paladin. I just resonate a lot with a Paladin. I tend to love to play characters who are very devoted to a cause and very dedicated to something. And so I do love playing a Paladin. To me, it's, oh, yeah, like it's always about like, what do I resonate with more than the mechanical side of it? Because bards for me, it wasn't always the most fun to play, but I loved role playing a bard. So,
For sure.
yeah,
For sure.
yeah,
Mechanically it's hit or miss, but I feel like
yep,
the concept and even like you said, the trope of playing a bard is is fun. It's
yes,
fun. You've got a lot more possibilities, whereas like even some would say a paladin can be very restrictive and very restrained in what you can do with them. A bard, they have free range. They can go
yeah,
wherever they want to go, whatever direction you want to take them. They can be just as engaging. But I'm really glad you brought up tropes because
hmm
this is something I have a bone to pick with players about, and I often get on them about, is that when it comes to World of Darkness specifically, those tropes are written into the lore for a reason.
that's true.
Uh, Everyone wants to play the against the grain, black sheep, unique type of character, and I think especially when it comes to Vampire the Masquerade, what they don't realize is they wouldn't be turned into a vampire in that clan if they didn't fall within some of those tropey stereotypes. They
Yes.
select based off of those tropes and based off of those specifics. And while it can be fun to be the against the grain character, I think in World of Darkness, it makes more sense to go with the grain and
Yep.
find small parts of your character that make them unique, make their story unique rather than, oh, I'm a rich Bruja or a rebellious Ventru or whatever the case may be. Like find something that goes within that groove. Otherwise, you wouldn't be that character. Like if you want to be rebellious, play a Bruja. If you want to be seductive or whatever, play a Ministry or a Toreador.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really glad you brought that up because I'm a big fan of tropes as well. Like
Yeah.
I have a love for just going with what works with a clan or a class or whatever the case may be. So that's really great that you brought that up.
Yeah.
So when did World, like you had mentioned you were brought onto the podcast, was that when you were
Yep.
first introduced to World of Darkness? Is that how it kind of came across your radar, or had you heard anything about it
Yes.
before that?
So I knew about Vampire the Masquerade. It's definitely like within, I feel like within certain spaces and even like adjacent to like gaming spaces, it's very much it's been kind of a cult classic type thing for some time. So I knew it existed and I had always been interested in it. Played, Bloodlines, the video game, of course. And I I just never really touched it much in a lot of the stuff I did till it came to my plate when a friend asked me to play in a World of Darkness game. And so that was in 2017 when she asked, and we did a stream. We did like the of this, like we were playing Changelings at the time, and we did like a short mini series, and it was right before fifth edition Vampire the Masquerade was to release. That came out in 2018. And so after we finished that miniseries, we're like, let's try, fifth edition. That's about to come out. Like, let's get on it, like right when it comes out, and let's do a stream of Vampire the Masquerade fifth edition. And so that's right when I dived into it. And that was, yeah, right in 2018 when it released. We were all like our storyteller and the players, we were all so new to it, and it was really rough back then. Like we did not know what we were doing, but it was really great. And so that was kind of my intro and how I got into like World of Darkness.
But that's what it's like with all new systems, right? When you try
Yeah.
something for the first time, you are going to bumble your way through it and like really just have to learn by doing. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In fact, I encourage it highly. Is like just try it and see
Yes.
what happens. There's no real wrong way to play RPGs as long as everybody walks away having enjoyed themselves and having had a memorable experience. What appealed to you most about World of Darkness? What was it as opposed to other TTRPGs you played? Because you're
Yeah.
obviously very into World of Darkness now. That's one of your specialties.
Yeah.
So what was it about the World of Darkness setting or system that really called to you?
Yeah. And you know what? It actually took me a while to find that, like to find my place in World of Darkness and what I really loved about it. Because I think when we first got into it, I really was enjoying it because I've kind of always been like a goth girl at heart. So I've loved the idea of playing a vampire and everything like that. That was the part I liked, but it was hard for me to get my footing into some of the lore aspects of it. And it can be daunting. I know that's probably something we could definitely talk about later. It can be daunting to know that there's a lot of rich history with Vampire the Masquerade and World of Darkness. So yeah, it took me a while to really get into it, but I what I loved about it is some of like just the darker, unforgiving storytelling that you can do, like just some of the stuff. Like my character went through a lot and it made her come out of, like, she went through like the trenches. She got in trouble with the prince multiple times, got like a lot of punishments, but she came out so strong from all of that. And it was just some of the most like incredible storytelling I've ever had. And so that was really what it was for me. And I realized more like because I've been doing a lot of tabletop stuff for many years, I really like the more darker, grittier stories, more so than I like the adventurer stories. And I'm not saying I hate doing like the typical stereotypical heroes adventurer story. I still like that, but I think I enjoy the world of like, and it's also why like Cyberpunk Red is another favorite of mine. I love those dark stories. There's just so much more. I just enjoy being in them more. So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's what drew me into World of Darkness.
I love it because it's a very engaging but also relatable setting. Like,
Yeah.
who of us hasn't thought there's something more to our world we don't know about? Like the fact that you can
Yeah.
play in places that you've been to or places that you want to go to, that you can
Hmm.
explore tangible elements and locations and just all these things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, but through a very different lens or veil that allows you to see it through a new light. You can get really creative and experiment with historical events. You can
Hmm.
experiment with, different parts of our society. And I absolutely love that. But I'm with you. I
Hmm.
love, I love D&D for its own right, but I've got to be in a specific mood for D&D.
Yes.
Whereas I'm
Yes.
always in the mood for World of Darkness. There's never a time I'm not ready for it.
Yeah.
And I think that World of Darkness embraces, no pun intended, and encourages you to lean into the trauma,
Hmm.
lean into the difficulty, lean into the dark elements and the essence of failure. And
Hmm.
that's where the fun comes from. Whereas in the adventuring things, it's about success and overcoming odds and, going on these crazy, fantastical adventures. But in World of Darkness, it really does like embrace the monster within, like tap
Yes.
into those parts of yourself that you have been told for the longest time to ignore, reasonably so. None
Yep.
of us should be doing this in our real lives.
Yeah.
But it does allow you to kind of reach into those darker sides of you and really consider them and the effect they would have on a person who can't hold back that element of themselves. And
Yeah.
it's a very empathetic game too, very psychological and empathetic, and I absolutely love it.
Definitely.
So your first clan was Toreador.
Yes.
What is a clan? And I know as a storyteller, we kind of play all the clans, but as a player,
Yes.
what is a clan that you have not played but have always wanted to?
Oh, there. I have a soft spot for the Tremere, and I know they are a contested. They have love and they have hate. You love them or you hate them. A lot of people will say, and I do have a very soft spot for Tremere, and I've always wanted to play a Tremere. Never had the chance to. I have a Tremere in my game, which is great. So they're not the favorite child. They're definitely not. But I yeah, that's probably one clan I would love to play. I know they have a pretty brutal history with some of the stuff they did, but I really enjoy them.
Well, that's some of what makes the Tremere good, and I wish people would embrace, again, pun intended, but would really lean into that aspect of the Tremere. Like I feel like if they
Hmm.
study up on the lore, if they learn the history, if they really get knowledgeable about what it is to be a Tremere instead of seeing it as playing a wizard and vampire, or
Yeah.
that they're a spellcaster type and that's all they really think about it. But if they really get into the fact that this is the imposter clan, this is the clan that stole vampirism, and really lean into that aspect of it, they can be very enjoyable. And they make
Yes.
amazing villains, they make amazing kind of shaking up the party element, and
Yep.
they can create so many great stories and plots.
Yeah.
Uh, I feel like they get a really bad reputation, one, because they are the imposter clan, but
Yeah.
that's great. I think that's awesome.
Hmm.
And B, because I think you do get a lot of the more mechanics invested players
Yes.
lean
Yes.
towards the Tremere. They want all the spells and sorcery and all this kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
in old mechanics or old versions of the game, they did them no favors because they made them very overpowered and
Hmm.
they gave them all the paths and rituals and all this kind of stuff. And I think that really made other clan players jealous, but also annoyed because the
Yeah.
Tremere can do everything. What do you need any other clan for?
Yeah.
Uh, so I think there's a part of that, but I love that. I love that Tremere is one to try because it is one of the more complicated ones.
Yeah. One thing I'll say also is the one thing I wouldn't say struggling with, but I'm finding interesting being a storyteller, and I have a Tremere in my current game that I'm running. Um, he like the Tremere can also be very insular at times, and not everybody has to play a Tremere like this, but I'm finding it hard to he will like keep a lot of things close to his chest and not share his secrets, which a lot of Tremere tend to be more paranoid and stuff like that. So I want to run a game of maybe just Tremere so we can kind of explore like the inner workings of the Chantry. I feel like I don't give my Tremere player enough time to just spend time at the Chantry and study and learn things. So I have this idea that's been brewing in my head to maybe run an only Tremere game so we can get some of that more insular like part of the clan. I think that would be really
Absolutely.
cool.
As we call
Yeah.
it, oops all Tremere or oops all
Yes.
whatever. I think it's a fantastic idea because I think the inner politics of the Tremere are fascinating, especially when you
Yes.
get into the various houses of the Tremere, which
Mm-hmm.
comes off a lot like Harry Potter, but it's still
Yeah.
very cool that they have these separate organizations and all these inner politics that you don't see in a lot of the other clans. A lot of the other
Mm-hmm.
clans don't have inner clan politics to the degree that the
Of
Tremere do.
Yeah.
And I love the way they're taking the meta plot of the Tremere of having the pyramid having collapsed, and now it's not able to be as insular because there isn't the structure that they had before. So I
Yeah.
think that it is okay to start playing Tremere as like trying to find a new safe harbor because they don't have the same security that they had before. So I think that's a fantastic idea, and I'd totally
Yeah.
love to see a Ultramere game from you where you got to
Yeah.
explore that because it's very very fascinating. Another clan that I think taps into some of the cool things about the Tremere is the Banu Hakim, obviously,
Yes.
uh,
Love Fana Hakim.
and with Blood Sigils coming out, you can do
Yeah.
so much with Thin Bloods now that you couldn't do before. You can do so much with Zemitzi that you couldn't do before,
Yeah.
with them
Yeah.
reintroducing cultism and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of possibilities there. So you played for several years, but this
Yes.
year specifically, you decided to take the headlong dive into storytelling. And not only did you jump into storytelling, within the course of the last 6 months, you have story told all three splats,
Yes.
which is a feat unto itself. What made you decide to take that leap? Because it's very intimidating, as you were starting to refer to earlier. It's very overwhelming.
Yes.
What made you decide to do that?
Yes. So I'll start from the beginning where it was so on MagiRPG, a lot of our players had been interested in playing Vampire the Masquerade. And at the time, I was the only one that had experience with the game in general. Everybody wanted, like, it's a very similar story I think a lot of people can relate to, where it's like, wow, Vampire the Masquerade seems really cool, but like finding somebody to run the game can be difficult because it is a lot and it can be intimidating and I felt the same way even though I was a player since 2018. Like I too had my doubts of being a storyteller. I was like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this, which I will say, like, to anybody, those feelings are totally valid. If you're feeling the same way, like you're like, I don't know if I want to be a storyteller, but I'm not. Like, it's okay to have those feelings and kind of like process them for a while. And eventually, like, I believe you can do it. Like, you can beat it. But everybody has those thoughts at times when it comes to storytelling. So I had been wrestling with that for a while, but I decided I was like, let's do it. It also doesn't help that like the games that I run are to an audience. So that too can add another level of intimidation. At first, I was like, maybe we just play offline and we don't stream it. But no, we were like, let's do it. Let's just stream it. And so, yeah, last April, actually, so it's been a year now, I
Oh,
started our chronicle, it's called Ancestral Blood. And it's the story, it's basically Succession, the HBO show, but vampires. And it was something our players kind of had the idea, like, what if we played like rich asshole vampires that were in a family and really play into that Succession story. And I loved it. And we hit the ground running, we told the story, and it went really well. And we had a great time. Everybody loved it. So we first started as like a 3-part miniseries. We decided to bring it into a full chronicle, and we're still running the chronicle. But the other thing I did as part of it was I actually introduced the other fifth edition. So we had hunters within the world, and then of course Garu. We had werewolves as well in this story. So I started last year, later last year. I ran a Hunter the Reckoning story chronicle that was again part of this greater world that I had already built. And then we introduced the Garu story in Werewolf the Apocalypse 5th edition. And it's all part of this original story that I started for Vampire. So they're all part of the same world. And it's been really great because the audience is loving it too. Like seeing the tie-ins from the Garu story, who they've done some dealings with the kindred. Not, it's not something they like doing, but that's kind of played into, what they've done has affected the kindred world. What the kindred have done has affected, the world of the Garu and the hunters as well. They have all kind of played into each other, and it's been really fun. And so I loved doing all three, and I just decided to do it and just learned and ran all of them, and it was great. We really had a great time with all three of them.
That's absolutely amazing too. I love that it is all the same setting. I love that you've developed this entirely fleshed out world. And I gotta
Yes.
say, I'm so awestruck and inspired by your willingness to go on stream with no
Yeah.
time to practice ahead of time, because I think a lot of streams, and they're talking about this in the chat a little bit, I think a lot of streams are very, very manufactured.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think taking the opportunity to learn along with this stream, learn
Mm-hmm.
along with, is a great teaching opportunity and an encouraging opportunity for those that are watching to say, like, hey, we're not perfect at this, but we are figuring it out, and you can figure it out with us and be
Yep.
inspired to try it, and not feel embarrassed about the taking that chance. When we started our werewolf stream, none of us, and I mean none of us, had played werewolf before, including myself. And one of the intentions behind the stream was to teach people the game along
Mm-hmm.
with us, so we always read the whole mechanics section about whatever gift they're using or whatever right they're using, to teach people how to play. And we've made plenty of mistakes on the stream, but I
Yeah.
think that's part of the process. And it makes it really, really valuable for people to go back and watch and see, okay, they encountered this mechanic and these were the issues they had with it. I learned something from watching this rather than just watching the story, which is great in its own right. To have it as a teaching tool and opportunity is so valuable, and I'm just absolutely blown away that your first vampire story at all, your
Yeah.
first hunter story, your first werewolf story, all of them happened on camera. That is so courageous,
Yeah.
and incredible.
Yeah, yeah. It was definitely it was intimidating. But I had the same thing where I was like, "Hey everybody, like just our first, and for all the players too, like it was our first time playing Hunter. It was the first time playing Werewolf, and we also made mistakes and there were things that we messed up, but like we rolled with the punches and we learned things, and there were many times I pulled out the rule book and I was like, "Hold on, we got to look this up." And I think that, yeah, that was a part of the experience, and I think, yeah, the audience values it, and it was just a great experience overall. So yeah.
It's clear you're also very confident and comfortable being on camera. I mean, I've seen some of the cosplay videos, I've seen some of the stream videos, like clips from the streams. Where does that come from? Do you have like a background in theater, or did you do any of this before, or did it take some time in getting used to be as comfortable and confident as you are on camera?
Yeah, good question. It's actually funny. I have a background in broadcast journalism, actually. So I went to school for broadcast journalism, and I did like I started out after I graduated university college, doing some on camera stuff, but I didn't fully go into that space. Like my dream job when I was younger was like to be like a news broadcaster or something like that. That was something I always wanted to do. I now do stuff that's more behind the scenes, in like my day job, but I've always done streaming, and I think that's been where I got some of that on camera experience, was just being a streamer and, streaming games for many years, I never did any theater stuff, even though I wanted to. I was not a theater kid. I really wanted to, and I do play games with some people who have more of the theater background. And that's one thing I find interesting, is that improv sometimes doesn't come as naturally to me as it does some of my friends that I play with. And so when it comes to like storytelling and stuff, I'm a prepper. I do a lot of prepping, and I need that prep because sometimes on the spot I don't always do well improving. But I like to have the more presenter mode kind of thing, but I don't have as much of the skill in like the improv side of the theater aspect of it. So I think that's kind of where I built up the skill.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah.
What's some tips or advice you'd give to people who want to get into content creation or getting comfortable on camera, but are maybe a little shy or a little nervous at the concept of it, can't get over the hump of making that first TikTok or whatever video that they want to make? What are some advice or some tips you would give them?
Yeah, I know everybody says, "Well, just do it." And it's like it's
Who are
always
that easy?
yeah,
Everyone would.
exactly, exactly. It took me it sometimes takes me time to do certain like videos and stuff that I want to do too. Like there's definitely like a mental block that comes with a lot of this stuff. And I think I've had this thing where I like to kind of like acknowledge those mental hurdles that I have, and those things, and just take the space to just like acknowledge and accept those feelings, because I have it too. I have a lot of like anxieties and social anxieties and stuff like that, where it just makes it hard sometimes to want to do certain content, or if I want to do certain streams. So I think like my thing is always just like kind of acknowledging those anxieties that you may have, and knowing that that's totally normal and is okay to have. And then, yeah, I guess just my thing, I've always enjoyed doing stuff with people. So if you have friends, that you want to, if you want to start streaming and you don't want to just talk to a camera when you have like two viewers or something, like doing something with friends kind of makes it so you're not just sitting there talking to yourself, or doing maybe a content TikTok with a friend, or just doing something with people. If you can find the people, I do find that helps ease some of that stress. So yeah, I think that's some of the advice I would give.
I've also found just asking questions of people who already do it. I've found
Yeah.
in my experience that most people in these communities are very willing to share their knowledge and share whatever secrets they use, or they might be able to suggest certain software for
Yeah.
editing or anything like that. And I found that they're very, very giving. It's not as competitive or cutthroat as people would think.
Mhm.
Everybody wants everyone else to succeed for the most part.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's outliers to every situation. But I think that just having the confidence to just ask, it never hurts to ask, even if you never get a response, even if, you don't get anything. The more people you ask, the more information you gather. And
Yeah.
this translates very well to storytelling too. As
Mhm.
somebody who just dove into storytelling, do you have any advice, especially World of Darkness, which you said can be very overwhelming and very
Mhm.
intimidating?
Yeah.
What advice would you give to people who want to try and dip their toe in
Yes.
that pool?
Yeah. So I love what you brought up, like asking people things. I definitely asked my like my storyteller inspo, who Mathis is his name. He ran, and is continuing to run our long term VTM game, the one that we all first started with in 2018 at the beginning. He has been running World of Darkness for many years, and he's run like Vampire the Requiem and all of this stuff. And so he's like in a way, like I'm like he passed the baton to me, and like I'm the next generation of the storytelling in our lineage. And so I asked him a lot of questions and got his advice on things. I have consulted friends outside of like the people I'm storytelling to for thoughts on like my plot, because sometimes I have my own like self doubts. I'm like, does this sound like it would be good? Like, does this make sense in the story? And just getting people's opinions on the story, I think is some good advice. And then for just like running a chronicle, yes, I think it can be like World of Darkness can be intimidating because of the history. Like there's just so much lore out there for World of Darkness. And you know, like myself, there may be many of you who are like me who is like we didn't play some of the older editions. I, never got into V20 or any of the older editions. So being just in fifth edition, that's okay. Like you don't need to know everything. You don't need to watch every lore video before running your first chronicle. For me, I picked one thing that I was interested in, and then yeah, I did a little bit of a deep dive on one part of it. Maybe that's fine, but you don't have to necessarily know everything before you get into it. It's just find one aspect that interests you. If it's an Anarch story, like maybe find something about the Anarchs that you're interested in, pick that, and just your chronicle can just be centered around that one thing, and it doesn't have to encompass like every aspect of the greater World of Darkness storytelling. Like that's just that it's not feasible, and it's fine to just kind of focus on one thing.
No, I can tell you, I've been involved in this game and running it for over 2 decades, and I still feel like I barely know
Yeah.
everything. Like I'm not even close to knowing everything. And I think that's a really good point, is to start with an element, whether it's okay, I want to play an Anarch story, or I
Hmm.
want to play in a specific city. So if you think of
Hmm.
a specific city, look into that city, see if there's anything pre-established.
Hmm.
And I love World of Darkness rabbit holes, because you will always find something else that will inspire you, and then something else that will inspire you, and you'll just find yourself learning because of that initial rabbit hole. So if
Yep.
you start with Anarchs, then you find out about Jeremy McNeil, and then you find out about, and you just end up learning more and more and
Yeah.
more and more. And eventually you have a really solid understanding and basis of lore, and it
Yeah.
doesn't seem as intimidating because you found an access point that led to everything else. It's this misconception that you have to know everything
Yeah.
before you start playing is absolutely false.
Yeah.
Absolutely false. And I'm really glad that you said it that way, because
Yeah.
a lot of people
I
just, yeah.
Yeah, like for me, it was Chicago by Night, and I will say that is a very popular one for fifth edition because honestly, like the book for Chicago by Night is very good. And I know, like that's the thing I think that can be also difficult for players is that like if you're coming from D&D, there's a lot of pre-written modules for D&D that are very easy to pick up and learn and run kind of by the book. Like my first game that I ever GM'd was Curse of Strahd in D&D 5th edition. And that one's it's very easy to run because it's a confined story and you can basically run it by the book and have a really great story and great long-term campaign. I know like World of Darkness doesn't have as much of that. I think like Fall of London I know that is a contained story. Yeah, it is
Mm-hmm.
in itself. And there are like some others, but for me, like I dove deep into the Chicago by Night stuff because there's a lot of interesting characters in that book, and you could tell a whole story just on one character in that book. And so that is like I know there's a lot of Chicago chronicles out there right now too. I listened to a couple, and yeah, I think that's like a good one to just like if you're looking to get into it. It's a more Camarilla story, so if Camarilla isn't always your thing, but it's a very good solid like Camarilla city in the current fifth edition lore, and they got a good book honestly for it. So that was like my thing and what really got me into it.
Well, and Paradox and Renegade both are doing this amazing thing lately where they are publishing a lot of mini adventures, a lot of mini
Yeah.
stories. In fact, they're publishing an entire book, Crimson Gutter, coming out soon, that is all just small chronicles in the whole book. And they give you everything you need to basically run that chronicle without having a large wealth of lore. And I think
Mm-hmm.
this is a fantastic thing about this overall fifth edition revolution in gaming that's happening recently, where they're making it accessible to a new era of fans, a new generation of fans. They are trying to hook people in, excuse me, that don't have a previous history or wealth of
Yep.
knowledge in RPGs. They're just like, hey, this is a new hobby for you. They're trying to hook a new crew rather than giving everything to the old generations that are still holding on. They're really trying to bring people in and say it's not intimidating, it's not
Yeah.
inaccessible. The systems have been streamlined, everything's been made easier for new people to access. And I love that, and I think that it's just a fantastic thing. So even Chicago by Night, like that can seem
Mm-hmm.
intimidating. They're developing an entire city, but it's
Yeah.
something like Let the Streets Run Red or
Yeah.
any of these
Yeah.
books that they've released that are just small one adventures, and they release
Yep.
them regularly on the Renegade website too.
Mm-hmm.
That can just at least get you started, get you introduced to the mechanics, get you introduced to some of the elements of the story, and then you can go down your rabbit hole from there.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
So I want to talk more specifically about your chronicles,
Yes.
but I want to throw it to our giveaway for a second.
Yay.
We are doing a giveaway tonight. Chromatic Creations and Crafty have been generous enough to offer one art piece to a lucky giveaway winner tonight. It's a single character, but you get full color art piece that you can get by just entering hashtag Crafty in the chat, and she will do that for you. And we are going to be giving away that winner at the end of the stream tonight. So put hashtag Crafty in the chat, and you could be in the running to get a free art piece from Chromatic Creations. And we're so grateful to have them as a sponsor and to be doing that giveaway with you tonight. So let's talk about your game. Let's talk about your long-standing story that has now crossed over 3 splats. You
Mm-hmm.
gave us a hint as to what the idea was behind it, but tell
Mm-hmm.
us more about the characters. Tell us where the game takes place. Just tell us all about the game, because I'm always fascinated to hear about other people's chronicles.
Yeah. So yes, Ancestral Blood. It does take place in the quote unquote canon Chicago by Night. Chicago was my idea for the city, and the other chronicle I play in is also in Chicago. Though we take some elements of Chicago by Night, but kind of developed our own Chicago story. But for Ancestral Blood, it is a Chicago by Night story, and it is primarily like focused on a particular Ventrue story. What it is Succession meets Vampire the Masquerade, and so a kindred patriarch who is a Ventrue by the name Lysander is his bloodline name. So Silas Lysander, he is rich, powerful Ventrue within Chicago, and he wanted to bring his children, and they have a long lineage and history of kindred within their bloodline. Bring his children into his unlife essentially, and bring them into kindred society because he has a greater plan that they have yet to discover what that is. But each of them were sired into different clans. They were embraced into different clans. So it wasn't like he just made his 4 children for Ventrue. One of them is a Ventrue, and he did embrace one of the children into Ventrue, but the other 3 had their own unique talents, and he handpicked their sires with his own influence to embrace into Clan Tremere, Toreador, and Malkavian. And so, yeah, it is for fledglings. They are, because they were also new to World of Darkness. So I'm like, let's tell a freshly embraced fledgling story. And so they are learning the how to navigate Camarilla society as new fledglings, but also they are rich, and if you've watched Succession, like the they're not the good guys in the story. They're a bunch of rich assholes, and they don't get anything good in the end. And so they definitely play into the rich siblings who argue a lot and have a lot of different interests. Our Malkavian right now is kind of flirting with the Anarchs a little bit. She got a little temptation of maybe potentially joining the Anarchs. We've had like kind of the factions at play. We have similar where Kevin Jackson is the Prince of Chicago, and if you know the name Lysander, and spoilers to anybody in chat who it's pretty obvious, but it goes back to one of the original Ventru child was Lysander from Greek Carthage days, and so they are part of a very powerful bloodline, and they have that influence in their family and bloodline. But they're also dealing with a rival Ventru who is a descendant of Hardestat, who also has his own kind of feelings of what he deserves as a Ventru because of his bloodline. So it's basically like these two competing bloodlines in the story, and they have dealt with some things that are borderline masquerade breaching that have gotten hunters involved. And that's where some of my Hunter the Reckoning story came in a little bit. And they've also done some dealings with Garu because there's been some potential. One of the Kindred has been doing some experiments on Garu and doing some messed up shit to the Garu. And so the Garu are also trying to fight back. And that was my werewolf story, was them kind of fighting against some of the Kindred that have been messing with them. So it's been, I've introduced, I say my advice earlier was, find one thing and stick with it. And I kind of like have introduced little elements of lots of things. So some Anarch stuff, some werewolf stuff, some hunter stuff, but it's been really great.
But you started with the one thing, and I think
Yes.
that's the important thing, is you got comfortable with that one element to the point that you could start to introduce more elements and make it more complex. And based off of what you've described, like, that is such a Vampire the Masquerade story, like warring bloodlines, like Methuselah's combating each other. It perfectly encapsulates the World of Darkness and Vampire the Masquerade specifically experience. And it does make sense that that would bleed over into Hunter, that would have effects on Guru and Werewolf. And I love that has been a turning point for you to want to experiment with these other things and to try these other things and to bring in different perspectives on this overarching story. That it does feel very epic, like a saga rather than just a small campaign. It's got this very thematic saga element to it, and I love that. So tell us a little bit more about the characters in your vampire game to start with. Maybe we'll talk about Hunter and Werewolf as well, but let's start with vampire. You said there was a Malkavian. So tell us about the characters.
Yeah. So the other interesting thing that I did, and I was just talking about this in my Discord and everything earlier. Each of them were embraced by like very influential like canon characters within World of Darkness. So the Malkavian was embraced by a canon character in Chicago by Night, Alexa Santos, who is the Hound of Chicago. And they are pretty powerful, influential figure. The Tremere, and I did this because I also just really like this character, but the Tremere was embraced by Aisling Sturbridge, who is the Irish. I did that as like a thing because she's my favorite like canon character in all of World of Darkness. I love her. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make her in my story and make her embrace the Tremere because why not? It's my story. So I did that. And the Toreador was embraced by Annabelle, who is also a very powerful and scary Toreador within Chicago. They all like, but the thing with their embrace was it was a very transactional thing. So they didn't follow the normal like responsibilities where the sire is responsible for their child. Essentially, their father made a deal with these influential figures and was like, I want the best of the best pickings. So I want each of you, and I will, be the one responsible for them. So he kind of rules a bit with an iron fist. And, our Malkavian, she is great. And we were talking earlier about all of the, when players play into those tropes of their clans, seeing each of them play into their clan tropes, like the Malkavian, she does a lot of premonitions and gets deep into the Madness Network, and it's really awesome to do that. I love giving my Malkavian wild
Oh, it's the
premonitions.
best.
It's
I mean,
so
that's
much
my
fun.
clan, so
Yes,
it's
I
it's
love that.
absolutely the best. It's
Yeah.
oh,
A side note, like Auspex is one of my favorite disciplines.
mhm.
It's just so much fun to do as a player and also as a storyteller. So she definitely gets really involved with that, but she's the one who I think is the least feeling connected to the Camarilla as a whole. She started dating this Anarch Bruja, the stereotypical Anarch
Of
Bruja,
course, of
and
course.
Dad might not be very happy about that one, and her brothers are not happy about that one either. Our Tremere is a doctor, and he plays very close to the Tremere like standard as well, and I love it. He is the most paranoid. He is the one. They just had a night where they all went out and like partied, and he was like, I'm going to sit and just sense the unseen and see if anybody's watching us and be really paranoid. And, I thought it was great. And then our Ventru, he is very much ambition. In the prequel, I gave him a choice to potentially diablerize somebody, and he decided to seize that power, and he did it, which was a surprise to all of us, but he did. So he's got his own like plans for his own ambitions, which again play true to the Ventru. And our Toreador, she is absolutely playing into her Toreador stereotypes as well. And she kind of right now is like the glue, I think, for them. It's they are great, and yeah, they're all siblings. That's the other thing. Like they're playing as siblings, and they role play fights as siblings, and so much of that. So it's been really cool.
I really have to catch up and watch this series because it's
Yeah.
hitting all the right notes for me. I love the idea of the rich, powerful father buying
Hmm.
their embrace by hand selecting the individuals who would embrace them, and
Yep.
the fact that they're all siblings and have this sibling squab. Like, this is so incredible. And you stream this on Magi RPG, yes?
Yes. Yeah. So we stream on Fridays, and we do kind of like seasons. So we do like 6 episodes. We take a couple month break, and we just got back into it after taking a couple of months break. So yeah, we're getting deep into the story now, and a lot of stuff has been introduced to them, and they have a lot on their plate now.
And where can we find the past episodes of this show for those wwho want to catch up and get into it?
Yes, it is all on our YouTube. So it's just, youtube.com/MagiRPG. And all the stories are on there as well. So our Hunter and Werewolf Chronicles are also on there.
What made you decide to either get involved with or start Magic RPG? Like, what was the concept behind that? Because I know we had talked before, and you said you were
Mhm.
really into streaming, and then it kind of transitioned into TTRPG play. How did you get involved with all that? How do you keep it going? How does it all work?
Yeah, so my Twitch channel used to just be my own personal channel, MissMagitek. I would stream video games. I did all of that, and I think I did kind of get burnt out from just streaming games myself. I wasn't enjoying it as much as I had used to, and I did build an audience, and I really enjoyed that. And my audience knew that I was getting more and more into TTRPG stuff. I still streamed TTRPGs on other people's channels, and was guesting on other channels, so I was kind of naturally transitioning into just doing TTRPGs on my own channel. And it did just kind of happen where I was playing games with my closer friends. We had been playing offline. We streamed a couple of games, and we were like, I was like, I think I'm at a point, guys, where I'm okay to just transition this into just us doing tabletop stuff, because I also had friends who wanted to run their own games. So on our channel now, we have Blaze in the Dark that we run, and we've run a couple of different Forge in the Dark systems. We've run Cyberpunk Red. We've done a lot of D&D, and I've also kind of like in transitioning my channel made a platform for some of my friends who also wanted to kind of take that GM mantle and run games for themselves. And it it started with like maybe playing with some of my closer friends who were like also my coworkers and stuff, but we've also brought in people from the TTRPG space that we've made friends with, we've made those good connections with, and we've built our own little thing from there. And so, yeah, this was about 2 years ago, I believe, is when I did the switch over from like just me, MissMagitek, to hey, here's MagiRPG now. This is the thing. We play tabletop games and we run quite a few games now, and it's been really rewarding for us to do this. I think my favorite thing is just giving people that power to just run a game. Like it's like, hey, I want to run. My friends like, I want to run a Fallout game. I'm like, let's do it. So yeah,
What
it's
you
great.
have a platform to do it
Yeah,
on, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. I
yeah.
want to point people towards your website, which is magirpg.card.co. You can find all of the links to all of the various social medias, all of the Twitch channel, everything on there. It's just the hub that links to everything else, kind of like our website, stpetebynight.com. This is the website where you're going to find everything that you want to follow. Go check it out. Go give them a follow everywhere because it's absolutely amazing what they're doing. And I'm a huge fan, and I'm definitely going to be tuning into that as
Yay.
much as possible. Uh, let's talk about your character though, because you're still playing your Toreador. You are
Yes.
still going in that campaign. What can you tell us about the character? What have they been through? What's the
Oh,
story of this character?
yeah. So my character, her name is Ava Heloise, and she is a Toreador who is my first character, and it's this is my longest running character I've ever played in any campaign or chronicle ever. And I played in a like the first D&D campaign where I played my bard. That was like a 2 year campaign, but this is going on 5 years now that we've been playing together, and we had a time. So our first like when we first started, when VTM fifth edition first came out, it was called Silence of Shadows, and we call it SOS because each season has had a variation on that title.
Sure.
But so we started back in 2018. We did have like a year or so hiatus, but this Toreador has been, yeah, my longest running character I've ever played. And yeah, we started on Roll For It was the channel, and now I stream on a channel, Pod by Night. And we had a similar kind of story where we started as freshly embraced fledglings. And Ava was a very like she was a bit defiant when she started. I actually was very like I think Ava respects Camarilla authority, but she definitely always questioned it. And she definitely plays into the siren feeding type and siren trope of the Toreador. She's very seductive and very charismatic, but she went through a lot. And our big overarching story right now is that we are dealing with a powerful La Sombra Methuselah who is looking to be awakened and open the abyss to essentially have eternal night in Chicago. And like they are like very much they have a big plan, and we are trying to figure out a way to stop it. But my character has actually had very close relations with the La Sombra. And it actually helped me discover my love for Clan La Sombra, actually. I actually, if you were to ask me now what my favorite clan is, it would be La Sombra. And for a lot of time, it was Toreador. But I have become very much in love with the La Sombra clan. I don't know what it is about it. It's just they're very the shadows and the abyss. It's just there's something about them that I love. But I think this character Ava and her kind of the Methuselah has essentially reached out to Ava and is like, you have a purpose in the story. And for a while, I think she didn't feel like she had a purpose, but this Methuselah has been kind of tempting her to have a purpose in our greater story. And I have kind of toyed with that a bit, but I think ultimately, like my character is going to make the right choice in the end and fight against this Methuselah and their very not great plan that they have. But yeah, flirting with that evil a little bit, that temptation is something I very much enjoyed. And yeah.
Oh, the Lasombra are fantastic because they
Yes.
take what makes Ventru great.
Mm-hmm.
They add a lot of mysticism to it. They
Mm.
add the religious bend and the
Yep.
Sabbat history. They are a fantastic clan, and I think that they don't get nearly as much love as they should because they are really great. And I think once people actually start to dig into them, they see that it is more than just shadow play. Like there's a lot of really, really cool
Yes.
elements to the Lasombra, but that's something to be said for every clan, every tribe, everything in the world of
Yep.
darkness. You don't find anything in the world of darkness that didn't get a lot of love, a lot of thought, and a lot of characterization put into it. I
Yeah.
hated the concept of Thin Bloods, and then I started to research them and play them. I love Thin Bloods now because there's
Yeah.
so much put into them, and you can tell that they're not gonna half-ass anything. They're not
Mm-hmm.
gonna, they're gonna give their all to anything that they bring into this world. And if you really do take the time and you'll find something that you love about any clan, any sect, anything, because there's
Yeah.
so much thought put into it. And so I love that it's gone from Toreador to La
Torador to
Sombra, but
Lasombra. I'm in my
it's
edgy phase now. Yeah, no,
oh, it's
that's
so
what it is. Yeah.
you're going through the edgelord emo
Yeah,
phase.
yeah, exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
What is a clan other than the Tremere that you
Hmm.
want to try, that, or what's a clan you don't want to try? Let's do that
Mm.
instead. Let's flip it over on its
Yeah.
ear.
Oh,
What's something you
my
don't want to play in Vampire?
I'll be real with you. I don't have a lot of interest in Salubri. I very much think they are a clan that is have to be very specific. I mean, they're very rare in general in the world, and so I I like their concept of being like more of the Galkanda like healer type of trope, but like I've never had interest in playing one, and I very much like if if somebody wanted to play one in my chronicle, I'd be like, okay, we have to have a very specific reason as to why you're playing a salubri because they're just very rare and they have like there's just so many things to them that I'm just like I don't know like and so me personally like I don't have a lot of interest in having them in my chronicles or like introducing them or playing them as a character but I know they have a very like dedicated people who love Salubri, like love Salubri. So that's the other thing.
Oh, for sure. And I think
Yeah.
that there are, and we'll have to talk about this some offline because I might be able to give
Hmm.
you some inspiration with the Slippery. But
Yes.
they're a very fascinating clan. One, because of their origins, but also two, because fifth edition is interestingly bringing them back into canon. And I'm
Yeah.
curious what the long-term goal there is, whether it's just fan service because people want them, they
People
love
want,
them, they
yeah.
need them, or if there is something that they're working towards. I've always
Yeah.
thought that way. I'm very paranoid about World of Darkness because I'm like, why did they do this? Like, why are
Yeah.
they bringing back Coldonic sorcery? Why are they? What's the end game? Is it just fan service, or is it there's a story that's being told here of like maybe the Salubri are reemerging for some reason? Maybe
Yeah.
something is happening. Why would they do that other than, a PDF that maybe you have to dig to find? Now they're releasing it in books,
In the book.
and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
very curious to me. But I think that the Salubri, just like every other clan, there's gonna be something you love about them. And I
Hmm.
think that a vindictive Salubri trying to get back at the Tremere after all this time
Mm.
makes
Yeah.
for a very interesting story potentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm actually very impressed by that answer because a lot of people say, well, I
Yes.
don't want to play a Nosferatu because they're ugly or something,
Yeah.
very baseline. But instead, I think that makes sense because the
Yeah.
Salubri, they don't feel they're the odd man out of all of the clans in my
They
mind.
are.
All of the other clans make sense, and then you have this one good
Yeah.
clan,
Yeah.
one healer clan, in a
Yeah.
world of everything being evil, everything being dark, everything being selfish, and
Yep.
but then there's this one offshoot. It is an
Yeah.
odd choice.
Yeah, I'm curious now. I want to now ask you. Like, I'm curious what your because that's actually a good. I like this question of like, is there a certain clan that you have uh not as much interest in playing.
So I have filled the bingo card. I've played every single clan, and that a lot of that
Yeah.
comes from being a
Okay.
storyteller,
Yeah.
honestly. Like I consider NPCs that you put a lot of thought to and develop into basically like a
Yeah.
PC, so you've essentially played
Mm-hmm.
the essence of it. But I would say a clan that I have very little interest in playing anymore would ooh, that is a tough
Yeah,
one.
I know. Now I've Uno reversed onto you. I'm. Have you played like I another one that I haven't or don't have as much as like a Caitiff? It's to me, I'm like when there's so many cool options, I'm like, why would I pick Caitiff? So that's another one where I don't know. I don't have as
With the
much
right
experience with.
storyteller, a caitiff can be a lot of fun because a
Yeah.
caitiff is hard mode. If played in the
Yeah.
right game, it's hard
Yeah.
mode because
That's
everyone hates you.
that's a good
Everyone
point.
hates you. And so the
Yeah.
odds are stacked against you in every regard. Again, with the right storyteller. I think any game with the right storyteller can be played, like any clan can be played well if you have a
Mm-hmm.
right storyteller telling it. But
Yeah.
caitiff, I also think are kind of they're the
Yeah.
power gamer clan. Like it's the
Yeah.
build your own vampire, so you can
I
take whatever
think.
disciplines you want and stack
Yeah.
them. Uh,
Yeah.
so I think that they are. I think they are kind of unnecessary, but I love them as the odd man out. Kind of like I love Thin Bloods as the odd man out of like
Yeah.
we are playing
Mhm.
hard mode. Like
Yep.
everything tells us we shouldn't exist and that we're a problem. Okay, so
Mhm.
the chat's giving me a lot of shit for not answering the question. I would say a clan, and this is going to come across very, very poorly and be very poorly received. A clan that I have no interest in playing anymore is Gangrel.
Okay.
I've
Okay.
done the Gangrel thing. I've done
Mhm.
the, wilderness Gangrel. I'm in werewolf now. What do I need Gangrel for? I hate to say
Yeah.
it. Like I'm really into werewolf now, so I'm getting everything I want out of Gangrel and then some with
Mhm.
werewolf. I think there's a lot of great stories that you can tell with Gangrel. I think that
Mhm.
Gangrel are fantastic characters. They're a great introductory clan for new players. Because if you're used to playing Rangers, if you're used to playing Barbarians, if you're used to
Yep.
playing those kind of things from D&D, they're a great crossover there. There's a lot of great stories that you can tell with them. I've done it, and I've done it to death at this point. And so now I'm more interested in. I like very psychological based. I mean, Malkavian, my favorite clan of all
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
I like very social and psychological based characters. And
Yeah.
Gangrel is it's fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't appeal to the parts of the game that I like as much anymore.
Mhm.
But that's not anything to be said against Gangrel at all, or
Yeah.
people who love Gangrel. I
Yes.
totally get it. It's
Yeah.
just not. It's not my thing anymore.
Mhm.
I had that phase, kind of like you're going through your emo
Yes.
Losombro phase.
Yeah.
I had that phase. I played
Yep.
that character,
Yep. Yeah.
and now I want to deep dive into things like Salubri that I feel
Yeah.
like there's
Don't
stuff to be
have.
uncovered there.
Yes, that makes
Uh,
sense. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's a tough one. So now let's talk about werewolf because you, like
Yes.
me, are really experimenting with and
Yep.
working with werewolf for the first time ever.
Mhm.
What is your favorite werewolf tribe so far that you've uncovered?
A Shadow Lord, as to no surprise, being a Lasombra person now, of course. I
Interchangeable.
also, yes, I also love I love Shadow Lord. When I took the quiz, the World of Darkness quiz of what tribe are you, and that's of course what I got. I can't remember what was I wasn't Ragabash. I was what's like the more
Philodox?
not Philodox, the more barred one,
Galliard. Galliard.
Galliard, that's it.
Yep.
Yes. So I was Galliard, Shadow Lord, which is an interesting combo. But yes, that's the one I'm the most interested in. But honestly, in my werewolf chronicle that I ran, we had two heart wardens, a red talon, and oh my gosh, what was our last one? The rat um is their patron. Oh my gosh,
Oh, the Bone Gnars.
Bondar, thank you. So we had a Bonar, we had yeah, Red Talon and two Heart Wardens, and I really liked all of their tribes that they played. It was a lot of fun.
Another tribe and I understand why they've left them as NPCs, but another tribe that I absolutely love is the
Ooh,
Stargazers. I
yes.
absolutely love the Stargazers. I love the history of the Stargazers. Stargazers
Mm-hmm.
are playing a part in my current chronicle that I'm running in Werewolf.
Oh, that's cool.
And I love the concept behind them. And I love that they're still a thing because I know a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, and we talked about this a little bit before the stream too. A lot of people reacted very negatively to
Mm.
fifth edition Werewolf and what they
Mm-hmm.
did in renaming some of the tribes and changing some of the
Mm-hmm.
details of it, uh, and even resetting the canon, even though they
Yep.
kept a lot of the canon that they said that they reset. Uh,
Yeah.
I think that it's very cool some of the things they did keep, and I think the things they got rid of after enough time you don't really miss them. Like
Yeah.
they're not that big of a deal. They've compensated for it with the way they've redone the clans, and I do think with times you have to change things. They did it in Vampire too. Banu
Mm-hmm.
Hakim used to be Asimite. Followers of
Mm-hmm.
Set is now Ministry. Like you
Ministry.
have
Yeah.
to adjust things as the
Mm-hmm.
culture changes. Because if
Yep.
we don't, we
Mm-hmm.
still have books being released that are very, very problematic now, like the
Mm-hmm.
old World of Darkness had. It's a different time. It was a different, mindset then. We have to adjust with the times, and things like Werewolf have to do that too.
Yeah.
What is a tribe that you'd like to learn more about? One that maybe you haven't had a chance to really explore or dig into yet?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I would love to get more into the Black Furies. I know they also have a lot of history, and some things that they changed in, fifth edition. But they are another tribe that I think resonated with me. Like, if I wasn't going to play a Shadow Lord, that might be my other choice. I think they are very, very cool. And I feel when I was like reading up on all of the tribes, and that was, something getting into Werewolf Fifth Edition, it was a lot more research that I had to do than VTM, because I had been a VTM player for years. So there was like I knew all of the all of the core clans, at least like the back of my hand, like palm.
Oh
I was
yeah.
like, yeah, I know all this, but like, man, I did not know much at all about any of the werewolf tribes getting into it. So it was a lot of learning, and yes, like learning about some of the older tribes that were in some of the older editions. So there was a lot to learn, and and something else, like side tangent. I know we were talking about this prior to starting, but like I also like wanted to do some diligence to learn about the history of Werewolf the Apocalypse specifically, and learn about some of the things people had their criticisms about, as far as like the changes that they made, and just kind of learn about that. And I did spend some time like digging into that and learning and just hearing that, because I felt like that was important to have at least some of that context going into the story before I like dived into it. Because again, streaming these chronicles, like I was expecting somebody to say something about Red Talons, for example. Like previously, Red Talons were a tribe that only would start in, they didn't have a Hamid form, as they were, they all started as wolves, as
Mm-hmm.
and so now, like, I had a Red Talon who had started in Hamid form, and that's something that is in fifth edition. And a couple of people in chat asked about that. They're like, "Oh, you have a Red Talon, but they, have their are like started as as a human." Like, and I was like, "Well, that's something that changed in fifth edition." And honestly, I like the story and everything. It made sense for our story and his journey to how he had his first change and everything. So, I wanted to make sure I did that diligence and that research and understanding that before I just went into it.
Yeah,
So
you
it
don't
was,
want to be
yeah, very
caught off
interesting.
guard by a
Yes.
question that you might receive of like, well, I thought they all started this way. Then you're like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that a
Yeah.
thing? And then you feel
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
uncomfortable or
Hmm.
put on the spot, but at least you have a baseline knowledge to say, yes, you are correct. They did start
Yes.
that way in the older editions, but we're in the new edition, and in the new
Yeah.
edition it's stated otherwise. I think that there's this let's let's talk about the World of Darkness community as a whole, because it
Yes.
has gone through a big
Yes.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
transition over time.
Yeah.
One of the things that I hate about the World of Darkness community, or have had struggled with, is lore
Mm-hmm.
gatekeeping or mechanics
Yes.
gatekeeping of like, well, it
Yes.
was this way, it should always be this way. And I think this is a problem with all gaming
Mm-hmm.
systems. To be fair, D&D's had its fair share of it too.
Yep.
But I think that we have to trust the process. We have to trust the reason they're doing things. Another thing that Vampire gets a lot of guff for is the intermixing of disciplines, and that disciplines have become very fluid now, and that there aren't
Yes.
clan specific disciplines as much anymore. And that, you know, you can have Auspex and get Demontation but not be a Malkavian. You can do Oblivion, which kind of interblends Cicada and now Lasombra as well. And people have a really, really hard time with accepting that. And I
Yeah.
think we just have to understand, like, this is the direction it's going. You can
Yep.
either get on board or you should bail out. And
Yeah.
instead of trying to yuck other people's yum or ruin other people's fun who are
Yeah.
embracing this element, just
Yeah.
let it go. Like, it's not a big deal. What are your kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah. And that's why I went into this and I had like a disclaimer before I started our werewolf game of like, I want to like acknowledge the legacy editions of Werewolf the Apocalypse. Like, I understand like there is a lot of history, but it's not like, we are telling a fifth edition story, and this is like a world in which I've built in the fifth edition universe. And so we are going to move forward with these changes. Cause I know there are some people who actually like I've seen some very like specific like homebrews of certain things of Werewolf the Apocalypse, like if this is how I would change it. And I'm just like, look, it's really not that bad once you like look into it. And there's a lot of great stuff in Werewolf the Apocalypse 5th edition.
100%.
And so I try to just like be like I come into it with like a respectful, like I understand the legacy, and like I know that there's a lot of like people who have the nostalgia factor of what they grew up with, and I unfortunately don't have that because I didn't grow up with vampire or werewolf, but I am okay to kind of usher in this newer legacy of werewolf, and all of my players were new too to that, so we kind of enjoyed that story together. So I just had like my own little disclaimer of like, yes, we acknowledge and like totally hear, there's like all the legacy stuff, but like this is what we're doing
Well,
for fifth
I think
edition.
that's more of a blessing than a curse, to be honest, because you have a
Yeah,
very open-minded perspective, and I do
yeah,
too. I was not a fan of Old Werewolf. It was too much of a departure from Vampire for me. I couldn't wrap my head around it at the time. I probably wouldn't have tried Werewolf if it wasn't for 5th edition being released and it seeming a
hmm,
lot more fluid and accessible, and there
yes,
were a lot of the same concepts and mechanics that Vampire had introduced. Like, I love the rage and hunger and
I
desperation
do too.
system. I
And
love it.
Harano and Hoglask,
Oh,
like
so
I
good.
love that. Yes. Oh my
But it's
gosh.
not so much of a departure in your mind from what you had come
Yes.
to know from having learned Vampire, having learned Hunter. It's all very fluid. It all feels very
Yeah.
balanced, like they can
Yeah.
exist in the same universe.
Like
And
things like touchstones and stuff too. Like having a touchstone as a werewolf, and I think even the hunters have. I Do they have touchstones? I can't remember now because it's been a while. But like having those same mechanics, I think is really helpful to just make this world kind of all fit together.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
grateful for it. So while I appreciate the nostalgia people have, I
Mm-hmm.
understand more than
Yeah.
anyone about being attached to the way things were. When Chronicles of Darkness came out, I was furious because I
Yeah.
was so attached to Vampire the Masquerade and could not experience or accept a new
Mm-hmm.
world of darkness. I get it. I get it. But that's the nature of the beast. Like, that's how it's going to happen. You can either get on board or go play 20th anniversary. Like,
Yeah.
if that's your thing, if you want to stay in the past, go play in
Yeah.
the past. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but to allow people to accept it either way is so important, and I think that there's nothing wrong with deciding to be in the 5th edition. I encourage it highly. And
Yeah.
it does make
Yeah.
it very accessible. So I approve of that.
Yeah.
The World of Darkness community also has a very checkered reputation and history. And being
Mm-hmm.
someone who is new
Mm-hmm.
or newer, I don't want to even call you new because it's
Yeah.
5, 6 years now, but
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
newer to the community, what have you experienced in terms of the community as a whole? Because I know that in the
Yeah.
past there were some very toxic elements to the community, that
Mm-hmm.
it was very gatekeepy, standoffish,
Yes.
very aggressive at times, and I think being a dark setting, it appeals to those types. Uh,
Yeah.
what has been your overall experience with the World of Darkness community, and have you found yourself running into any of those more problematic parts of it?
Yeah, I think that there is definitely those aspects of it in World of Darkness, and I've seen it in my own content. Like sometimes I look at our comment section, and there were like for Werewolf, there's like people dismissing like, "Oh, this is fifth edition, bye," and I'm like, "Okay, bye,
Okay, bye. Yeah.
whatever." Yeah, but I have seen those toxic elements in World of Darkness, and I I think I have a interesting view on it because I have just been so chronically online and in so many fandoms for so many years that like I'm at a point now where I it doesn't bother me as much as maybe it used to. And I actually just kind of look at it and I'm like, "Oh, like that's." And it's not great to say like this is horrible, but like I also love I've recently got into Warhammer 40K, and that community also has a notorious like history, and similar to that, it doesn't actually bother me. I look at it and I kind of am like, I've seen so many toxic fan bases that this is just kind of par the course for it. And
Right.
so I I kind of just am like, you know what? This is this is a thing, and it is I don't let it bother me. But I know that is not so easy for some people because it can there can be times where people come into you if you say something about what you enjoy. I've been lucky where I haven't had like I don't do super like hot takes or anything of certain things in World of Darkness, but I feel like if I did, maybe I would get more more people in like my comment sections on my TikToks and stuff saying things. But I've been pretty neutral. But I I understand some people when they are met with a lot of vitriolic community, it can turn them off to that community. And everybody kind of has their own sensitivities and experiences things different. And I have a friend who's like, I'm not the biggest fan of like the World of Darkness community as a whole. And I'm like, I totally get it. Like, not everybody has their own like tolerance levels of these things. And I think I've had more like I've just become so like used to it in so many communities where I'm like, you know what? World of Darkness is just like any other, like in some ways, which is not great to say, but that's kind of been my view on it. But yeah, again, I also just acknowledge that level of like, not everybody can just shrug it off. Like some people do want to feel like, no, we should, like, there's like the Brujas who are like, no, we should fight this. We should be more aggressive in this space. And I think that is great too. But for me, I'm like, I just I'm so used to. I was like, yeah, like look at I look at Warhammer 40K over there. I'm like, yeah, look at that space,
Yes.
and
You
yeah,
think this
so
is bad? Check
yeah,
that
yeah,
out.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's just been kind of my take on it, I guess.
Well, and I think one thing that was one of the missions behind our community, I see it in your
Hmm.
community, is that you just provide safe, accepting spaces
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
hopefully try to get the people who are looking for it, get them in the right space to show them that not all of the community is like that. And I think that's the same with
Yeah.
any fandom. Like you
Yeah.
said, all fandoms have that weird toxic element in it somewhere. And as
Yeah.
long as spaces like ours start to crop up, that will keep it alive. That'll keep it going. That'll help provide safe harbors for people as long as they can get past it and keep looking.
Yeah.
If they can stumble into communities like these, they'll
Hmm.
find them to be places that they can learn to love the thing that they've been afraid of for so long because of those other spaces they've been to. And it's really good to see And there's been a few communities like this, Huddy and all these others that I've
Yes.
talked to. They all provide these really good, safe spaces. And
Hmm.
it's just such a beautiful thing to see because it does allow a love of the world of darkness to continue without as much, not to say none, but as much vitriol and issues as it has had in the past.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I want to ask you more about storytelling, but I do have to do another plug for our giveaway tonight
Yay.
because
Yes.
it is important. Let me get it up here. There we go. Um, we are doing a giveaway from Chromatic Creations, who is giving away an art piece for a lucky viewer tonight. All you have to do is put hashtag crafty in the chat, and you can get a full color art piece of one character of your choice. Does not have to be Vampire the Masquerade or World of Darkness. It's anything you like. And having worked with Crafty and seen her artwork before, she is fantastic collaborator. She will work with you every step of the way to make sure that you enjoy the art piece you receive. So just put the hashtag Crafty in the chat, and you can be in the running, and we will draw that winner as we end our broadcast tonight. But yeah, hashtag Crafty in the chat will put you in the running for that art piece. So, storyteller wise, which splat have you had the most enjoyment running? It seems like you're vampire, which I totally
Mm.
understand, but what is
Yep.
it about vampire versus the other splats or systems that you like the most? Like what from a storyteller perspective?
Hmm. I think for vampire, it has been the the political aspect of it. Obviously, yeah, vampire is a very political game, and there is a lot of players. And this is I've been in this long-term game that I've played in, and in our game, we have had a lot of players in the game. And me being the storyteller now and taking that seat, I am now managing all of these players in the vampire game. And so I have I have a Notion now, a Notion page, and I have pages for each of the key players who have stakes in the story. So that is like the anarchs. The anarchs have things that they want, and I've introduced them, and I have a list of things like these are the anarchs' goals. I have our Hardestat descendant. He has his own goals and ambitions, and this is his list. The Tremere have their own goals and their things that they want out of the story. So I have that list. The Ventru, like Kevin Jackson and some of the other like inner circle Ventru in Chicago, they have things that they want, and that
Mhm.
is there. And so I'm like it's so fun like keeping track of all of their individual like the factions, their goals, and like what they are trying to get, and kind of managing that while also managing my players' story and their goals, because I want to make sure they are able to hit the things that they want and their ambitions as players. So kind of balancing all of that in the story has been really fun, and I think that's what I'm enjoying the most about Vampire specifically is just introducing. And now even like yeah, I consider the Garu a faction in my vampire story because
As
they
you
have
should.
they have their own goals, and the hunters have aligned themselves specifically with the Second Inquisition, and like they have their own stakes in the story now too. So that's what I really love about it, and I think that's been my favorite.
It's like the most complicated game of 4D chess where
It
you don't even
is.
know how many players are in the game at any given time because you talked about all the ones you just mentioned, but there's also Methuselah's, there's
Zula,
also
yes,
Sabat, there's
Sabat,
also like there's so many layers, and I love it so much about
yes,
the world of darkness in general, but very much specifically Vampire the Masquerade. Like Vampire the Masquerade is the politics game.
yes,
Whereas,
yes.
werewolf, you get a little bit more of the spiritual and a little bit more of the nature saving and a lot more of the combat. But vampire, it's so founded on politics. Like,
Oh
it's
man,
so founded in politics, and it's fantastic.
I quickly want to share one thing that
Do it.
was so I didn't actually realize this as I was building the story in Chicago. There is a canon lore moment in World of Darkness, the War of Chicago, which was a Werewolf versus Kindred. It was a Garu versus Kindred war that happened in like 1993 in Chicago. And I actually didn't know that was a thing till I was doing some research. And I was like, it actually played so well into my story because there has been moments where like the Garu could almost like and Kindred could almost go into another war. Like it was that close to like brink of war. And I was like, oh my God. Like, and one of my Garu players had said that to the Kindred. And very intimidating way. He was like, maybe history will repeat itself. And it was like a very powerful moment. And it was like echoing back to the War of Chicago. That was an actual, I was like, oh, this is so cool. This is an actual thing that happened. And we're like
Yeah,
adding it to our chronicle. And so like I was like, oh my gosh, am I about to start a war in my in my chronicle? Like I was like having that moment where I was like, holy shit, like that's a thing that's happening. And like there is
absolutely.
so that was just really cool also to have.
Well, and Chicago's one of the best settings because I consider it to be the most developed setting in World
Yes.
of Darkness. Like every single edition has had a Chicago by Night book.
Mm-hmm.
Every single edition, Chicago has had an ongoing story that has developed, that has incorporated so many of the different settings and splats. Like you said, War of Chicago, definitely, absolutely. And I think that it's very cool that most of your games take place there. I think that it's a perfect place to stage a chronicle because there is so much history that is
Yeah.
written that you can call upon, and so many callbacks and throwbacks and things that you can do. So that is fantastic. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. You said that you're a prepper, that you have to
Yes.
put a lot of time into preparation. How much time would you say you have to spend to prepare for a session, and what's your process in preparing for a session?
Yeah, I love this question because yes, I am a prepper and I know this varies from storyteller to storyteller. My long-term storyteller Mathis, he does not prep much at all. Like he's one of those where he shows up. Yeah. So and that is man, that's a skill one day maybe I'll develop or maybe I'll never develop because this is the type of person I am.
Yeah.
So you know, every storyteller has their own thing and again for everybody to chat like as you're if you're a new storyteller and as you're developing, like you may be a prepper, you may be a jump into it, or you may eventually turn into like a I don't need any notes or anything like that.
Or a combination of the two.
Or
I
yeah,
mean,
exactly. So it it takes some time to figure it out, but from what I have learned thus far is I do like to prep and I like to it helps me go into it with like a peace of mind of knowing I have kind of some key beats that I would like to hit in the story and making sure I don't forget anything because again like there's so many elements and so many players in the story I'm like I have to make sure I remember everything but I like to prep some of the even some of like the scenes I like to kind of build the atmosphere so sometimes if I know there's going to be like an Elysium at the Chicago Symphony, which is one that we did have, I kind of prepped what was going to be there and kind of some of the descriptors for it because I really like to set that vibe. So getting all of that ready is very important to me. So I will take time. I usually will take at least one night before my game each Friday to just kind of sit down and take some notes. I also like to write a dramatic like opening monologue for each session, which varies from like just a couple of minutes, but I like to just kind of set that
yeah,
tone for my players. So
absolutely.
I do prep that, and I like to kind of prep some of the key beats that I want to hit in for each week. But I do find that helps, and I definitely like to have some of that preparation ready.
One of the struggles I know a lot of people who put a lot of preparation into their games run into is railroading, that they find
Mm,
themselves constantly trying to keep what they had planned the track for the game, regardless of what the
mhm.
players do. And if I've learned anything in 30 years of gaming, the players are never going to do what you plan for them to do exactly. How do you manage and prepare for or deal with that?
Yes, and I have had that a couple of times, and it does momentarily stress me out. I won't lie, because I am still, regardless, an anxious person at heart. So if they do something that I'm not prepared for, I do. I actually think it's okay to take a few minutes to think about things. I haven't done this much in my games, but I always have it as a thing that I'm willing to do, where it's like, if they decide to take a direction that I wasn't planning on going, I'm like, okay, guys, let's take five. And again, this is something I think might be easier if you're running an offline game, but I think with the stream games, there's that added pressure that you don't want to take too many breaks. You want to keep things going. But I am of the nature of like, okay, guys, let's take five so I can just kind of plan this out for a moment and think about this before we move forward. So that I think don't be afraid to take that time to just kind of think for a moment. So yes, I think that that's one thing I've kind of prepped for in railroading, or not railroading, but more of the unexpected moments that the players will have.
What is a situation that you've been completely thrown in? Like, give us the details of the event, or is there a situation where you felt like you were going to be completely thrown and you were able to course correct? But like, what's a moment that's happened in one of your games where you were just completely gobsmacked or baffled by whatever happened that
Yeah.
you didn't prepare for?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. So there was I had a moment in my Werewolf Chronicle where our Red Talon player, they had actually gotten to a bit of a fight, and the Red Talon, he's a bit more hot headed, and he ran off and went off on his own. And I was like, oh shit, where are you going? And he decided to go walk into the den of one of the kindred I had prepared for them to fight. He was a gangrel that was who was ready to hunt Garu, was ready to hunt the lupine. And so I wanted it to actually be a like mini boss fight for them in the chronicle. It wasn't gonna be their final boss, but it was gonna be a big boss fight. And he went by himself, and he actually like it was actually really a badass moment for him. And I was ready for this to be like a big epic fight, but he rolled really well and like went right for this gangrel and like honestly tore him apart and ripped him to shreds very quickly. And I was not expecting that. I was not ready for that. Like I was ready for this gangrel. Like he had some things ready to fight the lupine because I wanted them to run into a trap, but he kind of caught the gangrel off guard and just went in and rolled really well and just tore this one apart. And I let my player have that moment because it was actually a really cool moment, to display the power of how dangerous and scary Garu are in
Mhm.
comparison to Kindred. Like it does not take much to tear them apart. And I think I wanted it to be something bigger, but because it was just such a cool moment that I let it happen where I was like, you know what, I'm gonna let this just be a quick. It was like one quick scene, and he ripped him apart, and the player loved it, and just it was nice to see the player really enjoy their moment too. So that was one where it threw me off guard. I was like, oh my gosh, like he's about to just go to this gangrel. I had this whole thing planned for them to have like this cool fight, and like he was gonna have his own villain monologue and talk, and they were gonna have a talk. That didn't happen. He just went in and he Krynos form and just ripped him to shreds, and it was really cool. So I'm glad that we did that.
That's a cool thing too about the different splats is their different approaches to handling situations. So for like hunters, it's all about prep. You need to
Yes.
spend all your time preparing. The encounter itself is actually the smallest portion of the overall story. Everything
Yep.
else is research leading up, getting the supplies, planning the plan. All of this stuff is hunter. In vampire, there's no rivaling them in social situations as anything else. Like in a social situation, a vampire will win 9 out of 10 times, probably 10 out of 10 times. And then there's werewolves.
Mm-hmm.
Werewolves, no one will stand toe to toe in a fight with a werewolf if a werewolf
Yeah.
is on even playing ground with a anything. If
Mm-hmm.
if the hunters get a lot of prep, maybe they can take a werewolf. But
Yeah.
overall, it just coming straight on at one another, a werewolf will win out of time every time. And I love that difference between those three categories as well. Like it's just so fascinating. So I love that you exemplified that by just saying, like, he walks in there toe to toe, he's
Right.
gonna win. He's
Yep.
like, even if it's an elder vampire, he's probably gonna win if it's just a straight up fight.
Yep.
And that's so cool that you showed that off. I think that's fantastic. So one of my favorite experiences, but also most frustrating experiences, is running for other storytellers, because I've found that
Mm.
other storytellers tend, and I'm guilty of this beyond. Bera, one of our storytellers, knows firsthand. We push the boundaries. Like
Yes.
we try some of the most wild and unexpected stuff in any game when we get the chance to be players. Do you feel like, since becoming a storyteller, since, running games has become your thing, that you, when you get the chance to play, maybe push things a little bit more than you did as a player before? Like you throw caution to the wind a little bit more
Yeah.
and are
Uh,
willing to do a little more wild stuff?
Yeah, I have seen that a lot. I've had that in some of my other games that are like my cyberpunk games. I've had that where the players will push my storyteller players will push the boundaries quite a bit more. I myself, I haven't done that too much yet with my World of Darkness games. But I will say the one thing that I have changed is I know the rules to a T now. I will call, like, if my storyteller, like, if we have to roll like a frenzy or like a resist frenzy or something, I'm like, actually the role is this. And I was never that player, but I am now like the player that will roll up with all of the rules now because I've stored. I'm like, I just had to roll for Diablerie, so I remember what we had to
Yeah,
do
I
for
had to
this.
do it so many
So
times.
yes, so I am definitely now like the rules person since becoming a storyteller.
And
So yeah.
I think that type of player gets such a bad name. People like to call them rules lawyers, people like to call them all
Yeah.
this kind of stuff, but I think they're so valuable to have,
Mm,
especially when you're an early storyteller or you're just learning the game or whatever the case is. It's good to have one of those people at the table. One, because they're going to teach you as well. Like, they're going to help
yes.
you learn. And as long as they are polite about it, as like
Hmm.
I do it too. When I'm at tables, I'll often be like, now, normally it's done this way, but it
Yeah.
is your game, so if you want to do it another way, you can. I just want you to know, rules is written. This is the way you're supposed to do it. As long
Hmm.
as you take that approach to it, and it's a respect thing and not a I know more than you do, or a braggadocious thing, I think it's totally valuable and absolutely a positive to running a
Yeah.
game when you can have a player like that. I have a player in my werewolf game, Champ, who does
Hmm.
that kind of stuff to me all the time. Like, I'm like, okay, roll a frenzy check, and it's just like, it's a 2 to beat a frenzy, and
Yeah.
and I'm
Yes.
like, fine.
Yes.
um like, but it's good to have that. It really is,
Yes.
because it
Yeah.
does teach you to get better, and it teaches you to learn more. And I think that, the bad reputation aside, like, everybody has their own way of doing things, and I think it is super useful to have that kind of person at the table.
Yeah.
um so we talked about this a little bit before the stream, but let's do it on
Hmm.
stream. What do you think the next splat's going to be? Where do you think World of Darkness is heading next? Because they've released Vampire. In
Yeah.
a total curveball, they released Hunter second,
Second. Yeah.
and then they released Werewolf, which was no surprise to anybody of the
Yeah.
pillars. That's kind of the order it's always gone in.
Yep.
Where do you think World of Darkness is heading next? And do you think they might throw another curveball in there?
Yeah. So I think the next quote unquote what would be the next logical fifth edition? I think mage, and that would be what I think I would like to have. I think mage fifth edition would be great. And if I had to choose predict, maybe, but then again, I don't know. Like, they may not like go into mage. I think changeling would maybe be the, like, if they want to do a curveball like Hunter was the second, maybe changeling could be the next fifth edition installment. I feel so bad for the World of Darkness team because I'm sure they get asked all the time
Oh,
about like
yeah.
when's the next fifth edition
Oh,
coming
for
out,
sure.
and
For
and
sure.
it's like, yes, we're all like eagerly waiting because I do want to like introduce mages into my game maybe. So uh it would be great to get a 5th edition of Mage so I could have a life mage come in and help out with some stuff. So that's where I would personally like to see the next installment be, is Mage.
One thing World of Darkness has done so well recently is I feel like the ship has kind of leveled out. I know that
Hmm.
since when Vampire the 5th edition first came out, the ship was very unsteady. They went through various publishers. The
Yeah.
team was kind of fluctuating back and forth. It was a very difficult time. So like 5th edition Vampire came out, and then we ended up waiting for like 2 or 3 years for
Yeah.
another book to come out for anything other than like Chicago and Cult of the Blood Gods, which they've had to re-release since. Um, it was very unstable, but now I feel like they have a system, they have a pattern. It seems like they're releasing a splat once a year, and they're releasing several like supplements to the splat throughout the year. And if that's the pattern it goes through, they did it with Hunter, they've done it with Werewolf this year, next or last year, I should say, next year
Hmm.
maybe Mage. It seems like they have a system that's working for them.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very hopeful that they do know where they're going. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Uh, One thing I've noticed about the way they've released things, and I talk about this every After Dark, so I apologize to everybody in the chat who's heard me say this over and over again. The systems tell a story too. It seems like they are always play testing something in preparation for the next system. So Vampire, obviously the start, it's where they introduced all the mechanics, it's where they started from. The
Yeah.
Hunter curveball didn't end up in the long story of things seem like as much of a curveball as it felt, because I felt like some of the mechanics they introduced into Hunter ended up test playing Werewolf, and
Yeah.
some of the mechanics they've ended up bringing into Werewolf, like the gifts, the rights,
Yeah.
all of that, definitely seem like a setup for whatever's next, which could be Mage, but also could be something else. And I think it would be personally interesting. I'm waiting for Mage 2. I'm very excited for Mage. It'll be great.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I'd really like to see them dip into like maybe Wraith or maybe Changeling
Wraith.
in between to help bridge those mechanics even more into Mage, because mechanics wise, Mage is going to be the most complicated game. It's
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
be, and it's going to be the most criticized game mechanically as well,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
people are so,
You know,
so connected to the old Mage mechanics, and I just don't see how they could do it that way in 5th edition and keep it the same level balanced playing field that they have so far. But I'd
you're
love to hear your
right.
thoughts on that.
Now that you bring that perspective, and I do think like a safe bet would to maybe go Wraith. Because that I don't think will have as many controversy. And I gotta say, like Werewolf 5th edition was a pretty controversial release for them.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they play it safe and do something a bit more like Wraith, or even, Changeling might be also a safe play, rather than, yes, getting into Mage, which I'm sure will have a lot of its own legacy players coming in with a lot of their own thoughts on it. So that's actually a good perspective, and I could see that being the next move. I also wonder if maybe they might even potentially work on like a new, like a revised 5.5 edition of like Vampire or something, where they
Yes.
change some mechanics, because there are some things that just, I think they did put the full thought into when they were building it, like some mechanical parts of 5th edition that maybe could be revised. So I even wonder if maybe we'll see like a revised 5th edition, or like a 5.5 or something of Vampire one day. That might be something else down the line.
What is something that you would let? That's actually a really good thing to bring up. What's something you'd like to see them revise? What's a mechanic that you would like to see them either alter or change or adjust slightly if they were to release a 5.5?
Yes. I got to think of something specific. I saw, yeah, blood resonances. Yeah, that was something that we were talking. Oh man, I never use those. I, oh, so, okay, I'm going to talk about one thing that I don't like in Vampire the Masquerade, and get everybody's thoughts, because I literally was just talking about this also last night as a part of our game. So I have a weird thing with generations and blood potency. I don't like this. So if you were like a ninth generation vampire and you were going to embrace somebody, they would be a fresh lick, new fledgling, but they would be 10th gen. And
Right.
like, and they would have like a higher, if I'm not mistaken, they would have a higher, yeah, they would have a higher blood potency. And so like, even though in like the political sphere, they are a fresh lick, they're a fledgling, they are a brand new vampire, they're a baby. They still have like an up in the game. And I don't like that. Okay. Like, we have a thing in our current game that I'm playing in where we're thinking of embracing one of our players' ghouls, but we're going to get somebody to do it. And the person who's going to do it has a higher blood potency and generation than all of us. So he's about to be embraced and he's going to be a higher gen than all of us. And I'm like, that doesn't sit well with me. We've been here. We've paid our dues. You know, I'm a 12th gen and he's going to be like 9th gen. I don't like this. And so like, I don't like that whole thing. And from what I've learned, actually, apparently Vampire the Requiem has actually rules. I haven't played VTR, but I know they have rules where it's like when you start at, you know, you start at like 13th gen, like when you get embraced. So that is something I don't like, but that's just like a personal thing for me and my stories. But I know it works for some stories. So yeah.
I agree with you completely. I think blood
Yeah.
potency, the concept was sound because one of the big things
Yes.
that they're leaning into in the meta plot and in the mechanics too is that the fact that the old are dying out or disappearing and the young are
Mm,
inheriting the world.
yeah.
So they're trying to show a mechanical differentiation between the old and the young, and it's reflected in blood potency. But I agree with you also that, well, what happens if you get a fresh lick who is embraced by a ninth gen or seventh
Yes.
gen
7th
or
gen.
whatever? Like,
Yeah.
how do they get those blood potency dots for free, and how does that not immediately overpower them? Or
Yes.
do they
Yeah.
start at one, but they have the excuse to buy up to three or whatever the
Yeah.
case may be? And so that is a very valid point, and I think there has been a lot of conflict in
Yes.
they want you to play fresh vampires, but they also want you to
Want you to,
play low
yeah.
generation or like
And
high generation vampires like the 13, 12, 11 vampires. And
yeah.
so it is very conflicting. I think another mechanic that they need to iron out is group mechanics, coterie, pack, cell
Yeah.
mechanics. They need to find a
Yes.
system that is the same across the board for all the systems, and they just need to put it out there because Vampire introduced coterie mechanics. Hunter had nothing for cells.
Cell, yeah.
Werewolf had nothing for packs, and they're saying that in the Shattered Nation book that's coming out in August, they're
Mm,
gonna have pack mechanics. But
yes.
how are they gonna compare to coterie mechanics? And again, what about our poor hunters? Like, do they not get group mechanics? And
Yeah.
if they want to balance out the world, I think they just need to make a uniform system across the board that works regardless of if it's a hunter cell, regardless if it's a werewolf pack, regardless of it's a covenant mages, whatever the case may be. They need to make a system across the board that covers all of that because the
Yeah.
conflict unbalances the game. And I know most table games don't have to worry about this, but we
Yes.
run all of those splats with varying
Yep.
tables. We need it very badly. We actually homebrewed our own hunter and werewolf
Oh,
mechanics
wow. Yeah.
because of it. But yeah, that being said, as a storyteller, how do you feel about homebrew and how much of it do you use in your games?
I do like homebrew and I use quite a bit of it. And I think homebrew is always great to have. I think as like we were saying, some of these books that have been getting released more and more, they are introducing World of Darkness is introducing more and more things that make things a bit more open in some ways. Cause I know that's the one thing about like Vampire the Masquerade is there is a very like there are specific traditions to follow and things like that. And you don't necessarily just because they're there doesn't necessarily mean you have to follow them in your chronicles. Like you can build what you want to build. But I definitely don't mind homebrewing, or really what I say is like finding a story reason to bend whatever rule there is. So like my in our ancestral blood story, this it's fresh on the mind because it just happened. My Ventru, or their father, their patriarch Ventru father, used a very high level dominate discipline. Ancestral dominion is what it's called, and it's in the player's guide.
Oh yeah.
And it's perfect for our story. And I homebrewed it a little bit for our story in that one, it requires blood sorcery 2 to use, which he doesn't have, but I wrote in that like essentially the Tremere helped him. They gave him some blood and they did a little bit of blood magic to give him the components he needed to use this particular discipline. So it was like I realized there was the amalgam there and I was like, okay, but like I think if you see something cool in the books and it's like, oh, well, this requires amalgam, like, and you want to add it, like adds a story element to just kind of bend that. Like it might not make sense. The Tremere did some Tremere shit to make it happen, you know? Like that's totally valid to add that if you feel like it's something you want to add. So that's why, yeah, I definitely am a fan of homebrew, and to me it's more like, okay, let's tweak this a little bit to make it work for our story. So yeah, that's what I like.
One thing that I found fascinating that they did in fifth editions that they didn't do in the old editions is in the old editions, if you bought a dot in a discipline, you got all the powers at that level. Whereas here, they're like, you have to
Mm,
pick your path, and it's going to be
yeah.
unique from everyone else's path, which is cool, but also feels kind of restricting. And
Mm-hmm.
so we also incorporated a homebrew where once you max out at a discipline, you can feed off of another vampire who has a power that you want and swap out the power that you have at a certain discipline level. So, for example, if you
Wow.
want to switch the first level discipline of Auspex, for example, you find someone who has that power and you feed off of them and you can swap out that power. Because I found that in play, the story will often change the trajectory you built your character for. So you may have started down a certain path heading towards a certain
Yeah.
five dot discipline, which later on you're like, that's not even applicable anymore. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
My character's changed. I can't afford or I can't rebuild my character to work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so we introduced a mechanic that allows you to, and I think that it's so super useful because
Yeah.
especially if you want to have a long running chronicle where it's not 6 sessions, 12 sessions, whatever the case may be, having that ability for characters to change uh makes sense and is actually super super useful. And again, none of the other systems, hunter and werewolf specifically, well, werewolf is a little more restrictive, but hunter, you could end up buying everything if you really
Yeah.
wanted to in the long run. And
Yeah.
werewolf, we also took the reclawed homebrew mechanics which allow you to buy out of tribe or auspice gifts
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you might need them. um
I really
so
like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's something super useful. Tracie, I've taken up so much of your time tonight, but you have been absolutely amazing to talk to, and we do have to do a part two at some time, maybe after the
Yes.
next splat comes out or something, because I have
I
so enjoyed this
I know, me
conversation.
too. I didn't
Uh,
realize. I was like, oh wow, we've been talking for like 2 hours now.
yeah,
Oh my god.
exactly. And I like the old school versus new school
Yes.
appreciation of things because
I'm
it's
yeah.
so great to talk to
Yeah.
someone. I've talked to so many people who've been in the game for decades, like me. It's
Yeah.
nice to talk to someone who's still new to it, but is just as in
Young,
love with and involved with it.
enthusiastic.
I
Yeah,
love it. I
exactly.
love it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
And I
it's
love talking
fantastic.
about it. So
Uh,
yeah.
so we're gonna have to make that happen. But first, before we say our goodbyes and final thoughts, let's do our giveaway.
Giveaway time.
For those who have been watching, Chromatic Creations is giving away a free art piece. It doesn't have to be a World of Darkness character. It can be a character from any setting. One free character art, one character of your choice, fully colored, fully detailed, fully done. They're giving it away to anybody who put the hashtag crafty in the chat tonight. So if you haven't done so, this is your last possible chance because I am literally about to do the drawing. Hashtag crafty in the chat gets you in the running for this art piece. So go ahead and put those submissions in now because I am literally going to draw it in just a second here. Do you have any final thoughts? Anything that you would like to say to the community at large, to plug to encourage people to go check? I'm going to go over all your plugs as well after this, but anything
Yes.
you want to say?
Thanks for having me. This was really fun. I love talking about World of Darkness. I am so happy to see other communities who are just as passionate about it and are running chronicles all the time in all three. It makes me very happy to see love for Hunter the Reckoning and Werewolf as well, because I enjoy both of those chronicle or those stories so much, and I want to do more of them as well. So very happy to see all of the hunter and werewolf love as well.
Well, and I'm going to try, to convince you to come either guest in one of our games or maybe sit at one of our tables because you are fantastic. But I also know what it is to be the
The
forever
storyteller.
storyteller, to
Yeah.
always have to be the one running the games. And even though
Yeah.
you have played in a long-term vampire game, maybe you want to try werewolf, or
Yeah.
maybe you want to, have an experience as a player in one of those systems. And we'd love to absolutely have you at one of those games. So I'm going to work on that. We'll
Yes.
see if we can make some schedules aligned to make that happen. But now for our giveaway, the winner of tonight's Chromatic Creations art piece is
Drum roll.
Venom Jesus,
Woo!
one of
Venom
our
Jesus.
new followers,
Oh my
who
gosh.
came because of you, won the
Yay.
giveaway. So Venom Jesus, message me here, or I'm going to be joining the MagiRPG community right after I get off the stream here, so you can message me there, and we'll put you in touch with Crafty so that you can get that free art piece of a character of your choice. But thank you so much for submitting in the giveaway. It's really, really, really awesome having you here for this stream tonight. So, things I want to plug for you are so many, but I'm going to do them as quickly as possible. One, go follow MissMagitek on TikTok. I know TikTok might be in its dying days. We might only have 6 months or 9 months or whatever left of TikTok. Who knows? Who can believe anything that's happening with social media these days? But go follow MissMagitek there because the content there is incredible. A lot of it is World of Darkness, but there is a variety of stuff. There's some Warhammer 40K. There's some D&D. There's cosplay. It's fantastic. There's so much, and it's a very, very entertaining follow. So go give a follow there. You can also find our dear MissMagitek on Twitter. So if you are in the
Yay.
tweeting game, if you're in the Twitter Xverse, whatever we're calling it these days, you can go give MissMagitek a follow there. It's Miss_Magitek, unlike the one word as it is on TikTok. So go give a follow there. Also, we have Instagram. Same, Miss_Magitek. Give a follow. There's link there also to the card.co website that you can find there, but go give that a follow. And then obviously, go check out MagiRPG. There's their website. It's magirpg.card with 2 R's.co. That is the home hub website for everything MagiRPG. You can join the community. You can follow the Twitch stream. All the links you need are in that one place. And let's go intermerge our communities. Let's collaborate.
Yay.
Let's support one another. And let's make this world of darkness not so dark in the out of character
Yes.
fashion, and bring some positivity and light to both communities, because it's been an absolute joy being able to share our experiences together. But that being said, Tracie, thank you so much for joining tonight. It's been such a better conversation than I could have ever imagined, and I have like 1,000 more questions that I want to ask you. But maybe that means we do a part 2 sometime, and
Hell yeah.
maybe we can talk about some cross collaborations or something in the future, because I love what you're doing. You've inspired me just in the way you've talked about your games, in the way you've talked about the way you do things over there, and I'm very excited to go see it for myself. So I will be joining that community post haste as soon as we get off of this stream. And yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Yes,
We really,
thank you
really
so
appreciate
much.
it.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody.
So thanks to everybody for watching at home. Go follow St. Pete by Night if you feel like it.
Yes.
Also on all of our links down below, which are in the description on Twitch and will be in the description on YouTube this week. The schedule's kind of messed up this week. So on Tuesday, we're going to have Rage Across Tampa, our werewolf stream. Then both Don't Get Caught and Bloody Strings and What the Hell Is That are all off this week. But Bloody Strings is returning next Sunday after our next After Dark. So there's not as much programming this week, but there are a few things you can check out. So just watch the schedule. It's all on the schedule. You can find out what's airing when. However, we are also proud to announce that we have a podcast now, and it is on all podcasting platforms. We have probably almost 20 episodes uploaded of past sessions. For those who can't watch the videos but just want to stay up to date, that's the place to do it. So go download those episodes. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us wherever your podcasts are found. Just search for St. Pete by Night and you'll find them there. Now that the plugs are over, thank you so much for everybody
Yay!
for watching, and have a lovely evening. Good night, everybody.
Bye.